question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. Now, this is a live show. We do take in all your questions. So if you have any questions you'd like to send in, please send them in via the WhatsApp, the email address. You can give us a call live in the studio, 0203 515 0199. Or if you're watching on Facebook Live or you're watching on YouTube, put your questions in the comment section, and inshallah the technical team will be able to send them to me, and myself and the Sheikh will be able to discuss and answer your questions. I'm your host, Hussein, and joining me is Sheikh Ali Ma'a. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How are you this evening? How's your fast going?
All great, alhamdulillah.
May Allah accept all your deeds, inshallah.
You too as well, inshallah.
Sheikh, now let's kick off with the dua that the dua commentary that you'd always like to start off with, inshallah. Tafadhal, bismillah.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. The dua of the 5th day of the month of Ramadan. As you know that we have a short dua for every day of the holy month. So this is the 5th dua for the 5th day of the holy month of Ramadan. It says, Allahumma ja'alni fihi min al-mustaghfirin. Allah, make me amongst those who would do istighfar, repent to Allah Azza wa Jal, ask Allah's forgiveness for the sins that were committed. وَجْعَلْنِي فِيهِ مِنْ عِبَادِكَ الصَّالِحِينَ. And make me amongst those who would be righteous ibad and righteous servants of Allah Azza wa Jal. To be amongst those who worship Allah Azza wa Jal, would obey Allah's instructions and rulings and avoid disobedience. وَجْعَلْنِي فِيهِ مِنْ أَوْلِيَائِكَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ. And make me amongst those who are close to Allah as a wali. Wali is the one who is very close to Allah Azza wa Jal, avoiding sins and performing the wajibat with great means of akhlaq, the great means of a'mal hasana. So becoming wali is important as well, highest stage in faith and taqwa. برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. برأفتك يا أرحم الراحمين. With your kindness, O the merciful. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla in this holy month, part of the dua, that to forgive our sins, to raise our levels towards the position and status of being wali, who is close to Allah Azza wa Jal, with Allah's kindness and mercy, inshallah.
Inshallah. Ahsan. Sheikh, already we've got questions coming in from our viewers. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
If I vomit while fasting in Shahr Ramadan, can I still carry on my fast? Now, Sheikh, I do believe the Sharia is between voluntary and involuntary vomiting. So please.
Yes, basically one should continue with his fast, but needs to redo his fast after the holy month of Ramadan.
I see.
So he should stop eating and drinking, because that doesn't make the excuse for them to break, eat and drink.
I see.
So they have to stop eating and drinking and to make up that day later again.
And if you voluntarily, on purpose, you make yourself throw up?
That's what I'm mentioning now, that the brother or sister needs to basically redo their siyam afterwards.
What if it just happened without, they were just, laying down or something, or they ate too much and they just threw up unintentionally?
Yeah, the intentional is the issue, but unintentional should be fine.
Unintentional, you can carry on.
There's
no problem with your fast.
But both cases, you can't eat and drink.
I see.
Both cases.
But only with the intention of vomiting, you have to make up a qada.
Yes. We come to this mas'ala
inshallah
in a couple of 1 or 2 days,
no problem.
inshallah.
Another question from one of our viewers. If a wife does not give permission to her husband to temporarily marry somebody else, does it become impermissible for him to do so? That's from WhatsApp. Sheikhna, do you need the wife's permission to do a muta marriage, for a husband to do another muta marriage outside?
As mentioned, with the Muslim woman, no. The issue is with the non-Muslim woman, with the Kitabi woman, in which in some cases one needs permission, and of course must take the permission, otherwise problematic with the issue of that marriage. But anyhow, yes, for the non-Muslim, for the Kitabi, in some cases, the one needs permission.
Question from YouTube, Sheikh. How can I make up my deceased parents' missed rosas, fasts? I guess so.
Well, you have to either hire somebody, pay somebody to do so, or you do it yourself. And to see the estimate how much of the days they've missed, and they just
maybe do it during the winter time. Be a lot easier.
Exactly.
Assalamu alaikum. Does Salat al-Layl or any other non-wajib salah have to be recited loud for men, or can it be whispered? That's on WhatsApp.
I think we answered this twice. Mustahab is mustahab. There's no wajib in terms of loud or quietness in salah. So in terms of reciting these, you have the option to do so.
From WhatsApp, Assalamu alaikum. Can I take student loan out for university when it contains interest?
Again, I've mentioned this before, that if you're compelled, if you're in need of this loan, even using the credit cards in which results in paying interest after a few months, if you're in need of it, compelled, then that would be allowed, of course, the ulama would allow. Otherwise, it's problematic.
From YouTube, what are the merits of Jummah Salah and how important is it?
Jum'ah Salah, if you mean by the official Jum'ah Salah with two khutbah, the 2 rak'ah Salah, in overall, the ulama would mention that it is wajib mukhayyar ikhtiyari. In other words, you have the option to do Jum'ah prayer with the Jama'ah, with the khutbah, or just pray Dhuhr Salah and carry on with your work. In overall, there's ikhtilaf and differences with this regard. You know, even past ulama, that some would say this is wajib, some would say it's not wajib, for example, not allowed in the time of the occultation of the Imam, Ajjallah Faraj Sharif, only prayed in the time of the Imam's presence. So that's the ikhtilaf in which now we have the fatwa which says wajib mukhayyar ikhtiyari, that you either pray this or pray Dhuhr prayer.
I see. From WhatsApp, why is caffeine permissible even though studies have shown it can cause psychedelic effects? Sheikh, caffeine is a substance that's found in a lot of, it's a natural substance found in coffee and so forth, but also in fizzy drinks and things like that. Nothing to mention that it is najis or that it is haram or anything like that. Sheikh, why is it still used, permissible?
Well, the narration is emphasized on the fact that كل مسكر, the muskar, the intoxicating drink is haram and najis as well. So not to be used for any other purposes. The ulama are very precise, and when they issue fatwa, they know how and what to issue the fatwa in the right place, in the right with the right mas'ala. So caffeine is just normal, one of those normal. It could be side effects with regards to the one who drinks it, for example, but it wouldn't cause intoxication as it causes with alcohol and wine. So that's why it's allowed to drink caffeine and not the muskir, which is the alcohol.
Assalamu alaikum. What is preferable, burying a dead Muslim in an Islamic cemetery in a non-Muslim city in which he died, or transferring the body to the Muslim city like Karbala?
Definitely, the encouragement is to transfer them to Karbala or Najaf, Wadi Salam. Definitely, with no doubt.
What about other Muslim countries?
Yes, you can transfer to Qom as well. Also mentioned.
Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, Yemen.
You can, yes. I mean, in terms of
Pakistan,
majority is the cities which has the imams' graves.
Okay.
Holy cities, exactly. So you have Mashhad, Qom, مثلا, Karbala, Najaf, Baqi' in Medina, for example.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna. Is the practice of magic permissible in promoting good acts and removing of evil in some people?
One should avoid it in anyhow, unless the one who is expert in this field and he knows how to, for example, repel the evil and so forth. So one should avoid it in anyhow.
Sheikhna from YouTube, interesting question here. We have all same 12 imams, but our maraja all have different opinions. Why is that so? Why, when the Imam are same, can't Maraja be same too? How are we supposed to know which one to follow or to be with? Thank you.
You see, you shouldn't compare between the fundamentals or the mains. You have Kitab and Itra, you have the holy book of Allah Azza wa Jal and the progeny of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They are the main, the fundamental, the basis. And you have the rest of the creation of Allah Azza wa Jal, in which Allah gives, nur al-ilm to somebody like the alim,
Yes.
who becomes a marja', faqih, jurisprudence, and he offers his knowledge to the public.
I think it's also important to mention that our Maraja have different opinions on things which the Aimah have not discussed. New things, smoking, stock exchange, stem cell research and so forth. These are new issues which were not present at the times of the Imam, so they were never mentioned, they weren't discussed. So now our Maraja are looking back at the sources, whether it's Hadith, Quran, Ijma, also using the Aql, to derive an Islamic law which they think is the most correct with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do and the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And yes, we'll get different opinions at times. Some people think this is correct, some people think no, that is correct. And it's the same like when you have doctors. You can find 4 doctors who have different opinions on one thing. But overall, the direction and what we call the spirit of the Sharia law is in the right place, I think.
Exactly, because what the Imams did, they gave the main guidelines and tools. So, for example, كل شيء لك طاهر. Everything is pure unless you discover it. And then from this qa'idah, from this basis, you can discover masail and derive and extract masail. That's what the ulama do. Take this hadith or this saying from the Imam alayhi salam and take and extract hukum shar'i. And don't forget that Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam are infallible.
Yes.
And our ulama are fallible. They're not ma'asumeen. Like the 12 Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. That's the difference. Big difference, huge difference.
More questions coming in. Assalamu alaikum. What is the ruling if one is asked to do sculpture work? Sculpture work meaning, Sheikh, to make statues. Sometimes it's not even of human beings. Sometimes it's of plants and animals and buildings, and sometimes it's like shapes and things like that.
I think someone would mention it's problematic in terms of the statues of human beings or animals. There's the ishkal with this regard mentioned.
Fair enough. Just 1 second, Sheikh, and I'll put up the question. What is the ruling on letting dense dust reaching someone's throat?
One of the muftarat, or the means of breaking one's fast, is to allow thick dust to reach the one's throat. Now, let's say it doesn't matter if that dust is from the soil and clay and sand, or it's from the wheat flour, for example. Somebody is working that, wheat flour, for example, manufacturing company producing lots of, flours and so forth. That kind of flour, or which is edible, is also known to be as thick dust. You have to avoid reaching that dust inside your throat. So yes, one of the muqtalat.
MashaAllah. Also, Sheikh, what about the dense steam, smoke and cigarettes and tobacco if reaching the throat?
Yes, as a obligatory precaution, again, cigarettes, smoke, steam, all these thick smoke would also cause for the one to basically to break his fast, mubtalat as-sawm. So one should avoid smoking, shisha and so forth. Yes, definitely.
Sheikh, what about if you're walking past, and someone has a cigarette, and you're not smoking yourself, you're just walking on the pavement, you're fasting, and let's say you're about to sneeze or you yawn or something, and you inhale some of that smoke. Does that break your fast?
If it's not thick smoke, should be fine. It should be fine, yes. Unless it's thick smoke, then of course one should avoid. Covers his mouth and nose with his hand.
Fair enough. Sheikh, does immersing one's head in water invalidate the fast?
Yes, according to many ulama, that immersing one's head inside the water in a form of diving, for example, that would also cause the fast to be invalidated and batil. Of course, as I've said before, being under the shower wouldn't break the fast. You need the ghusl to purify yourself for the siyam and salah. But to immerse, to dive inside the head, inside the water, while fasting, that will break the fast. Let's say if somebody dives inside the water, but the head is up, so the head wouldn't reach the water. So up to the neck, let's say, or part of his head is inside the water. The sawm would not be batil because he hasn't or she hasn't dived her head or his head inside the water. But in anyhow, one should avoid in the daytime of the month of Ramadan any kind of divings or swimming, just in case that. Yes.
Ahsan. Sheikh, a question from one of our viewers. Assalamu alaikum. I am a Sunni and I wanted to ask that we are allowed to pray with our shoes on, but my Shia friends say that it's strictly forbidden and you cannot pray with your shoes on. Can you please explain why this is?
Yes, because the whole idea about the salah is to make sure that all your masajid al-sab'ah, 7 spots of the sujood, must touch the earth, the ground. And the shoes is some kind of barrier between your...
So what if it's really cold and I wear gloves? Would that also be considered a barrier?
The extreme conditions has its own rulings. So we don't want to talk about the extreme conditions. But in overall normal conditions, you have to take off your shoes and pray and make sure that your toes reach the ground, touch the ground.
And Sheikh, for those who are not aware of the 7 positions or places of the body that need to touch the ground, it's the forehead, palms, both knees, and both big toes of the feet. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. So make sure they all reach the ground.
Inshallah. Sheikh, a question from YouTube. Is taqleed wajib? If it is, why so?
Basically, we have a aqli and intellectual reasoning that the jahil goes back to the alim. If I am jahil in terms of medication, I would go to the doctor, to the GP, to get the prescription and medication. I can't prescribe the medicine myself. I have to go back to the experts. If I want to build a house, I would bring builders, for example, to build the house. If I need to fix my car, I go to the mechanics, and so forth. The aql rules, the role of the reason is here to tell you that you must go back to the experts in all fields. So likewise, the fiqh, the Islamic rulings, jurisprudence, you have to go back to the jurists, to the ulama, or experts in this field who can extract the ahkam from its sources.
Sheikh, a question here. Assalamu alaikum. Is looking at a lady with non-hijab, would that break my fast? For example, if I'm watching something on Instagram or on TikTok and there's a girl, maybe she's not dressed appropriately neither, will that break my fast?
It wouldn't break the fast, but the one who is in this holy month and while fasting should avoid these acts. We are here to purify ourselves in this holy month from the acts of sins, from such lookings. So we try to avoid these things in this holy month. This type of lookings or even acts or listening to things which are not appropriate, for example, forbidden, to purify ourselves, and gradually we try to quit such sins, inshallah, in the near future.
Inshallah. Sheikh, now we're going to go to a short break, inshallah. Join us after the break as we continue our discussion here on Ahkam SOS. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. This is a live show. We do taking all your questions. So if you have any questions, please send them in via the WhatsApp, the email address, or you can call us live in the studio 0203 515 0199. If you're watching on Facebook Live or you're watching on YouTube, put your questions in the comment section, and inshallah the technical team will be able to forward them to me, and myself and the Sheikh will be able to discuss and answer all of your queries. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum.
Sheikhna, a question here from WhatsApp. Assalamu alaikum. I want to pay my religious dues. That might be zakat, khums, sadaqah, whatever. Who should I pay them to?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Initially, you have to see who you follow, the marja', to your marja', to the rep, if you trust the rep, of course, of the marja', to pay them the zakat or the khums. The best thing to go back to your marja' to ask. If you have your own charity projects, for example, you can ask for ijazah, 10%, less, more, third, and so forth. They usually give you the ijazah to spend on your own projects.
I see. Sheikhna, can a person who gives something in a waqf appoint a trustee for it?
Yes, waqf, basically there should be some people who would take care of this
To ensure
waqf.
it's used in the right way.
Exactly, so nobody can come and usurp that place for their own purpose. Somebody should take care of that land or that house, which is a waqf now.
Okay, fair enough. Assalamu alaikum. I've heard after Imam Mahdi alayhi salam appears, not his appearance, the rest of the Imams up to Imam Ali alayhi salam will also appear after him until the day of judgment. Is this true? That's on WhatsApp.
Indeed, one of the aqidah of the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam is the raj'ah. Raj'ah means the return of the Imams one by one, because they had no chance to lead this world and be able to rule according to Allah's rulings, حكم بما أنزل الله, and they were killed and massacred and so forth. So that's why Allah Azza wa Jalla will give them the opportunity to come back again and rule the world. And of course, after Imam Hujjah Ajjallah Faraj Sharif, when he is, of course, he's going to be killed, as the hadith says that ما منا إلا مقتول أو مسموع مقتول, that none of us would leave this world except to be killed, be it by sword or by poison and so forth. في مضمون الحديث. So the Imam would be killed as well, Imam Hujjah Ajjallah Faraj Sharif, بعد عمر طويل إن شاء الله. And after him, Imam Hussein salamullah alayhi would be the first person to return and to lead the world. وَتُمَتِّعَهُ فِيهَا طَوِيلًا.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu rahmatullah.
A single young man has been capable to perform Hajj. He is also thinking about marriage. Now, if he goes for Hajj, his marriage ceremony will be delayed for a while. Which of the two is preferable, marriage or pilgrimage?
Definitely the wajib pilgrimage has the priority over the marriage, unless there's a danger on his على كل حال, the akhlaq issue, the moral issue, then he can actually postpone the Hajj. But in overall, the Hajj, the ibadah, the wajib ibadah is always in the first place before anything else. So yes, in this case, the one should delay his marriage and go to Hajj first, and Allah Azza wa Jal will give him the inshallah tawfiq for the marriage and the sustenance and the rizq, as we have the narrations that the Hajj brings the rizq as well. So inshallah, things will be improved inshallah.
Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Is paying interest on property allowed if you're not living in it but need to pay it because it's your only source of income? That's on WhatsApp.
As I've said before, the first property is allowed because that's what you need to live in. But for the second and third properties, for investment and so forth, it's problematic. Best thing to ask your marja''s ijazah, see if they can allow you for this purpose, because paying interest is not allowed unless there are conditions for it.
Ahsan. Sheikhna, I wanted to purchase a Quran with all three Arabic, English translation and transliteration. The Quran is translated by a Salafi. Should I get the Quran?
If you think there's not much difference between, let's say, our translations and their translations, that should be fine in overall. And I've checked, to be honest. They seems to be similar, but one should be careful with some words, with some phrases.
It can be problematic. It
Yes,
can give a
yes.
different tense or a different idea.
Exactly.
But yeah. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna. Can I learn
Assalamu
Quran recitation from a Sunni Quran teacher? Are the Quran ahkam the same as ours, as the Shia?
Yes, there seems to be, of course, very similar. But in anyhow, you have to be careful about your aqidah and belief, that you don't get involved into the aqidah and belief and so forth. Only Quran, that should be fine. And if you have a alternative like a Shia teacher, that would be, of course, the priority.
Sheikhna from YouTube is having this. Okay, it's the famous eye. It's blue. It looks like an eye. You find it in Turkey and so forth, in Iran, and also in Iraq. Is having this shirk?
I haven't seen anyone saying this is shirk, not at all. To repel the evil eyes or something.
Along those lines.
It shouldn't be a problem. No.
Okay. From YouTube as well, Sheikhna. What is bada'a?
Bada'.
Yeah.
Again, another aqidah in the Shia, that bada' is that Allah Azza wa Jalla would show something for a reason, and then take away this something and bring something else as a result. So, for example, He would show, for example, how can I say it? The example is a bit difficult, but in anyhow, the bada' we have it.
Could you say with Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, showed him the dream?
Ahsant. Good example. The bada' with Ismail slaughtering.
Yes.
That Allah ordered Ibrahim to slaughter Ismail.
Yes.
Alayhi salam. So he tried to slaughter him, but the knife didn't work.
Yeah.
The angel didn't allow him, and he lived with his father. So that's bada'. That the first command, the first instance was to slaughter and kill his son. But because it was a test, some kind of a test, he succeeded in this test. He was successful. Then of course Allah Azza wa Jal gave him back his son. So that's some kind of a bada'.
Ahsan. From WhatsApp, Assalamu alaikum. Are making status of imams allowed? Oh, statues. Are making statues of imams allowed?
As I've said, the ulama have this debate that and discussion that making the statues is a problematic of human beings in overall. It's a problematic, so one should avoid it.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is, does the Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sadiq Shirazi Hafadullah allow us to use khums to be paid to hayya and muwaqib and majalis and so forth?
We have to go back to his office and ask them to see if they have such a allowance or permission to use the khums in this regard. So we have to go back and ask as a precaution.
Fair enough. From YouTube, Islam, is it okay for women to ask a man's hand in marriage?
I mean, there isn't an issue with it.
We didn't say the Khadija, salamu alayha.
Yes, we have the wife of Musa alayhi salam.
Okay. She asked for Hazrat Musa's hand.
Indirectly, we can say, So it is possible, it's an issue that in which we should. I mean, as a culture, it's not something acceptable as a culture, and I know that. But in overall, she can forward and ask.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It happens quite often here in the UK. In the West, it's not often, but it's not seen as something irregular. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna. If I break my fast at Maghrib Adhan with something haram, is my fast still valid?
Maghrib Adhan.
If I break my fast with something haram, is my fast still valid?
By the time the Adhan is called, khalas, you're no longer
obliged to fast,
because now you can break your fast. But why should you go and ask for the haram? I mean, when everything halal is available, why should one be so much to that stage of disobedience to Allah Azza wa Jal in this holy month, to break his fast with haram? I think the brother needs to double think about this issue.
Or the sister, we're not sure.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. How old was Aisha when the Prophet married her? And did the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam know what she was going to do to Imam Ali alayhi salam? That's from WhatsApp.
Yes, let me answer the last question, part of the question. That
did the Prophet know that what she would have done after his death with Imam Ali alayhi salam?
Yes. The Prophet has ilm al-ghayb from Allah Azza wa Jal. He knows, but in overall, in the battle of Camel, of Jamal, Ammar ibn Yasir radiallahu anhu tells the people that this is the war between the Imam Ali and Aisha, to see which you would follow. Is it her or him? Salamullah alayhi. That's a test. This dunya is all about tests and trials. So would you follow this individual or that individual? So that's the answer to the last part of the question. And what was the first
age? One? How old was
the age? Of course, in the Sunni narration, they would mention that he got engaged to her when she was 6, and he married her when she was 9. Of course, we have a different notion.
What's the Shia narrative? She was a lot older?
Yes. I think she was around 18 and onwards, something like that.
I've had 21, 20.
Possibly, yeah. Over 18.
But she was a young adult.
Exactly,
lady.
Yes.
Ahsan. Assalamu alaikum. Watching you from Bahrain. Alaikum salam to all our Bahraini viewers. MashaAllah, keep supporting Imam Hussein TV. Is it okay if I make wudu first and then break my fast and then pray? That's on WhatsApp.
That's what we do usually. We do wudu before iftar time.
Have something small.
Have some dates and warm water, and then go to pray. Salah, and then we have the full dinner afterwards. Or if you can not eat anything and straight away go to the salah, pray your salah. After salah, break your fast. That's up to you.
Okay. Which is preferred. I heard that you should break your fast as soon as you hear the Maghrib Adhan. So something small, but eat something and then go pray your salah. I've heard it's better to do that than to avoid eating at all.
What I've seen the ulama, that they would go straight to the salah, pray, and then they break afterwards. That's what I've seen myself. Yes.
Fair enough. From YouTube, can we pray with socks on? I don't think there is an issue with having socks on when you pray, but the issue is when you have socks on when you're performing masa in wudu.
Yeah, the masah is ishkal.
That's the issue. But with socks on praying is not a problem whatsoever. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna. Sufism has been teaching Islam in different methods around the globe. As a result, many people converted to Islam. On the other hand, ample people are against their beliefs. So please elaborate on this. This is from YouTube.
Of course, Sufism is a notion, is a على كل حال عقيدة in which is rejected by the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. We don't have such rituals that they do. For example, we have to only go back to the true teachings of Allah Azza wa Jal in the Holy Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. No one else has the right to bring to us something new, something that they'd like to provide and offer to the Muslim community. Whatever is in the Kitabullah Azza wa Jal and the Seerah and the Hadith of Ahlul Bayt and the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam alayhim ajma'een, that's what we have to follow and nothing else. Sufism, or I don't know, Mujabbara, Qadariya, and so forth, these are all batil and deviated sects of Islam from the true Islam. Even they narrate in their books, Ahlul Sunnah, that only 73 would basically sects in Islam. 70 will go to hell. Only one sect will be the saved sect amongst all those sects. So of course, yes, when we see those sects, of course, and they do not match with the Kitabullah and Ahlul Bayt, of course we have to reject it.
Sheikh from YouTube, what are some books to learn about Aqidah for a beginner, preferably in Arabic?
Aqa'id al-Imamiyya. If you find this book, let's say by Ayatollah Shirazi, very nice and simple and easy to read book. Yes. From
YouTube as well, will there be slavery when the Mahdi appears because of jihad? Allah hastens the reappearance of Imam. Will slavery reappear?
I haven't read or heard anything about this, but in overall, in the time of the reappearance, many people would become Muslims. Of course, the enemies would remain enemies and they will be fought. But majority of people would believe when, let's say, Isa alayhi salam descends from the heavens, the Christians, majority would become believers in the Imam Mahdi salamullah alayhi. So no, I think it's the opposite. Majority would become believers, only minority would fight the Imam alayhi salam.
I see, mashallah. More questions coming in from YouTube now. What is the best remedy for depression from an Islamic way? I believe it is Imam Musa al-Qasim, correct me if I'm wrong, or Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Dark grapes really helps
a lot,
depression.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But then there's also plenty of dua, and obviously a professional approach, which is go see a counselor.
Reciting the قل يا أيها الكافرون, the four قلs.
Yes.
قل يا الكافرون, قل هو الله أحد, قل أعوذ برب الفلق, and قل أعوذ برب الناس.
Question from YouTube: How old was Fatima Zahra salam alayha when she married Imam Ali alayhi salam?
Around the age of 10. Of course, we can't compare the Arab women in that time, especially Fatima to Zahra salam alayha, in which we have a narration that she used to grow for every day.
I've heard this one. I heard it was all of the Ahlul Bayt. They will grow like a day in a minute, a week in a day, a month in a week, like a year in a month.
Exactly,
so they'll grow a lot quicker.
So we can't compare ourselves and our daughters with Fatima Zahra salam alayha.
Inshallah. Furthermore, from YouTube, should we pray Maghrib before breaking fast or after? I think you've already touched upon that. Sheikh.
Yes, indeed. And there's a mas'ala, let me just mention with regards to the immersing one's head inside the water, that if somebody falls without his choice, or for example, he forgets that he was fasting, for example, pushed inside the pool, for example, of course, the fast would be valid in this case. It wasn't intentional, basically.
I see.
But as I've said, one or two of the ulama would not agree with this immersing. That it's not part of the invalidity. So it depends on the alim you follow, basically.
From YouTube, Sheikhna, is penile enlargement allowed in Islam? So that's of the sexual organ, getting that enlarged and so forth. Plastic surgery done upon all sorts of organs. Is that allowed in Islam?
We have to see the details. I mean, they have to speak to the rep or the marja to see in terms of the details about this operation. Is there any harm? Is there any haram? Initially, there's exposure to the surgery, surgeon, the medics, the staff, the nurse. That's by itself is haram. To expose your private parts.
Obviously.
That's the first step of haram.
True. From YouTube again, Assalamu alaikum Sheikhna. You can break the fast with just one date and then pray and then eat what you want. Okay,
exactly,
that's not a question. Yes. That's someone giving their own fatwa on YouTube. Thank you very much for that. How old was Bibi Khadija when she married the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? That's from YouTube as well.
From what I remember, she was around her 25 age, roughly that age.
How old was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Same,
25 to 28. Roughly that. Very, very close age.
Fair enough. Fair enough. From YouTube, Assalamu alaikum. I'm watching from South Korea. Oh wow. Assalamu alaikum to all our South Korean viewers.
MashaAllah.
Inshallah. I love Ahkam SOS. My question is, can I eat in a restaurant that serves pork and dogs? That's from YouTube. That's a really good question, actually.
The problem is because there's najasa, cross-contamination in terms of cooking, and that might lead other utensils and food najis as well. It's problematic.
So cross-contamination with
it's problematic, and you can see them. They're cooking with bare hands themselves. They are not even Ahl Kitab, for example.
Sheikh, what about the opposite? What about when you can't see anything like that? Can you use husn dhan and everything is tahar until proven?
The problem, if you know the cook, if you know that he's basically or she's cooking in this way and bare hands, for example, and najis hands, so it's an issue. Also, it's different than what is available on the shelves of supermarkets, from sandwiches, fried food, for example.
What if they wash the plates regularly and they use a different pan for every time they cook a curry or something like that?
You have to make sure that it's not any najasa involved in this cooking.
So there has to be a thorough investigation.
Not real thorough, but in overall, you can see them when they cook, when they put, let's say, they do the salad, for example, with their, if it is like moisture or wet hands, for example.
Fair enough. More questions coming in from YouTube. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna. Are we allowed to listen to music which is motivational, and does it include words which are against the teachings of Islam?
Of course, you mentioned the last part is against the teaching of Islam, so you should avoid.
If it's not against the teaching, I mean the words are not against the teaching of Islam, and it's there to motivate. A lot of people want to use music in the gym, for example. It helps them work out more and push heavier weights. Some people have what they call work music. It's at a certain speed and tempo, which allows you to actually focus on your work if you're writing or working or doing whatever. Things like that, are they allowed?
According to Ayatollah Sistani, he mentions that if this type of music is used in the entertainment or amusing music, used in the nightclubs, for example, that we see that kind of songs and music played. That's not allowed, of course, definitely. Even the ones which is in the gyms and in the some shops, restaurants, that's haram music.
Yeah,
you can't basically listen to that music. But the classical music, as I've said before, again, different opinions with the ulama with this regard. Some would allow this type of music like Pakistani. Some would not allow it at all. That all types of music, whatever is played from the musical instruments is haram. Whatever is played from the piano, from the guitar, it's all haram. But as I've said, others would disagree.
Fair enough. From YouTube, Assalamu alaikum. Heartbreak is affecting me from performing my duties properly in Ramadan. Any advice on how to combat this? Heartbreak is one of those unfortunate circumstances that a lot of us have to go through, whether it's the loss of a loved one or, heartbroken from, a situation, or sometimes it's like, you had your heart set on something and it didn't work out. For example, a new job or a position in a university and some things like that. And people do get disheartened. Sheikh, any advice to help this individual?
ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. Remember Allah Azza wa Jal in your prayers, at work, wherever, when you eat, when you want to sleep, always remember Allah Azza wa Jal. Recite the small surah before sleeping, for example. ذكر الله Azza wa Jal would inshallah repel all these anxieties, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna. Why is praying with gloves not allowed, but praying with socks is allowed? Doesn't it create a barrier?
As I've said, the barrier which is thick enough to avoid reaching the toes to the ground.
You can't feel.
Exactly.
So
there's a barrier. There's a barrier.
True. With shoes,
but with the gloves, it's fine. With the gloves, you can touch. You can feel. With the socks, same thing. You can feel. It touches. But if you were, let's say, thick, let's say shoes, for example, boots, for example, of course, that would be a barrier.
You can't. Yeah, your toes won't reach the thing. They won't be able to touch. They won't be able to feel the ground. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna. What is the recommendation on for learning about mystical Islam? Any book recommendations as well from YouTube? Mysticism, Usul al-Irfan, I think it's known as. Sheikhna, what is the opinion of our scholars in
philosophy and mysticism has been rejected in the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. They have told us to take only from Ahlul Bayt. The ulum should be taken and the knowledge from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Anything else we have to revise it, consider it, read it, to see, ask the experts, ulama, with this regard, the pious ulama, the udul, to see if we can study these books or syllabus of some subjects just for the purpose of knowledge, general knowledge, not to go deep inside this knowledge. Because many people studied and they fall into the aqidah of philosophy or mysticism or the so it's very dangerous.
I mean, there was a famous video from His Eminence the Grand Ayatollah Sheikh Ishaq al-Fiyad mentioning the works of the likes of Ibn Arabi and so forth, that they do not promote these and so forth, and the Hawza, like you said, are quite against these teachings. And also the opposite, they say that the real irfan and the real getting nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to do your wajibat, is to do your mustahabat, to stay away from haram and makruh, and develop your soul, and that is the original and the best of irfan.
Because the problem is the end result that they will basically want to reach is that combining the creation and the creator. وحدة الوجود and وحدة الموجود. That's the problem. That's the end result of irfan and falsafa.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day, you will reach to the conclusion that all the creation is one, and that one is Allah Azza wa Jal. And there's no khaliq and makhluq. That's the problem. That's a disaster. That some of the ulama they fell into this problem. And belief and aqeedah as well, yes.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Sheikh, saying that, that you don't believe in the khaliq and the makhluq.
They're all one.
They are one. The
all
creator
one.
and the created is one, which is
because they say that
questionable.
They say that
that belief.
الواحد لا يصدر منه إلا الواحد. The one cannot do except one thing, and that's it. Many قواعد they have and bases with this regard, which are batil, of course, against the aql and the shara'.
I see. Sheikh, I think we've got time to squeeze in a couple of more questions before we go off air. So, Assalamu alaikum. What is the Shia view on Sufism? We've already done that one. Assalamu alaikum. I've heard that there are 2 rakat salah that you can pray for the marhum who have passed away called Salatul Ahdiyah. What are the merits of reciting this salah?
In over a salah, you would send to the marhum
Ahdiyah as a hadiyah, as a gift.
Yes, of course they will get. I'm not sure exactly what is the details about the reward, but of course whatever we do, they will get a reward, inshallah, in their graves.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna. My question is, what is the ahkam for pregnant and breastfeeding mothers? I'm assuming this is to do with Ramadan and with fasting.
I think we mentioned a couple of days ago that with regards to the one who is in a situation of breastfeeding, for example, if her case continued till next month of Ramadan, so she missed one Ramadan, one holy month of Ramadan, she needs to pay two fidya for missing the fast and for not being able to make it up later. So basically, and also for the pregnant, she can't basically fast because of her situation. Then of course she doesn't have to fast on that in that month.
Another question, Sheikh. Assalamu alaikum. If I go to a shopping mall and there is music playing in the background, will I get the sin for listening to it even though I have no control over it? And also, what about if I am somewhere where someone is playing music out loud and I am there? That's from WhatsApp.
Yeah, basically, I thought Shirazi mentions that sima is allowed, so listening in the background and not in the foreground, and ignore the music. Just make yourself busy with the mobile, with talking with others. That's allowed.
Inshallah. Thank you very much, Sheikhna, and thank you to all the viewers for joining us on this episode of Ahkam SOS. If I didn't ask your question, I do apologize. I've got a couple here, and inshallah we'll roll them over to tomorrow and answer them tomorrow, inshallah. If you have a question you like to send in, please send them in via the WhatsApp, the email address. You can call us in live 0203 515 0199. If you're watching on Facebook Live or you're watching on YouTube, you can put your questions in the comment section. We had so many today just from YouTube alone. And inshallah, myself and the Sheikh will be able to discuss and answer your questions. There is no silly question or question too taboo or too... we answer all the questions. We don't need to know your name or where you're asking from. You can ask anonymously, and we will answer your question. If there is a particular marja that you want the opinion of, we have access to representatives, official representatives and official offices of all the maraja from Najaf, from Karbala, from Qom and so forth, and we can do our due diligence and research and get you your answers. Join us tomorrow, inshallah, for another episode of Ahkam SOS, 5:10 p.m. London time, here on Imam Hussein TV3. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
This Ramadan, help IHC distribute food baskets to the impoverished in Iraq and Afghanistan. You can provide a food basket which will feed a family of 4 for 10 days for just £25. That's £75 to feed a family for the whole of Ramadan. Now what comes in the food basket, I hear you say? Well, we have flour, rice, meats like chicken, also lamb and beef, dates, lentils,